everybody, I'm Tall,
And I'm small.
and today we are doing Khan Academy's MCAT Prep Biomolecules Evolution and Population Dynamics section. That was real smooth.
Yeah.
Okay, so first question. Which type of lethal inheritable allele is most likely to persist in a population? Okay, so this has to be lethal and inheritable. So, is it recessive, codominant, incompletely dominant, or dominant? Type of lethal inheritable allele. Most likely to persist. Oh, okay. So it's most likely to persist. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking recessive just because if it had any type of dominance, like even incomplete or codominant, that if it was the one being expressed over the other, then you
Oh,
would not survive to reproduce. That whole like definition of success as far as humans go.
that is actually very good. That's very good thinking. In my head, all I was thinking was like most likely to persist. It's inheritable. Like my head was saying which one is going to make the phenotype show up, and I was like, oh, it's definitely going to be dominant. But then I forgot to read that first part of the question. Lethal. So if you get this, you're going to die, and then potentially not pass on your genes. So yeah, a recessive allele could just be carried, but not necessarily be lethal. I like that. Let's hit check. Hey, all right, very cool. Next question. A small population of flies that has an even distribution of black-bodied and tan-bodied flies suffers a drought in which almost the entire population dies. As the population is recovering, the next generation has twice as many black-bodied flies as tan-bodied flies. What most likely occurred within the population? Okay, so small population of flies is even distributed. Okay, so we're 50-50 black and tan. Haha, black and tan. They suffer a drought. Almost the entire population dies as they're recovering. So if they say almost the entire population dies, I'm assuming that there's no significant reason why like black might have survived more.
Yeah, so when you first read the answer choices, inbreeding, adaptation, natural selection, the bottleneck effect, um, because of what you just said, like the body color probably wouldn't be the determining factor between survival in a drought or not surviving.
Hmm.
And I think I remember something about the bottleneck effect and numbers when a disaster happens,
Hmm.
and like skewing some result. So I'm not exactly sure what the definition of it is, but that one makes more sense over natural selection because there's no pressure
Yeah.
that would let us choose one of the body colors. And adaptation sounds like natural selection to me.
Right, yeah, adaptation would mean that there was actually some kind of competitive advantage. But if we're saying that the body color has nothing to do with the drought, then I think adaptation, natural selection are right out. And then inbreeding, well, I don't know, maybe inbreeding.
But that, I don't know, like between the population?
Hmm.
Because we don't necessarily know that like all of the bug families died except for one bug family.
Well, so inbreeding, I was only thinking that if we don't know if black or tan is dominant
Right.
over the other. So if you had inbreeding, then you might. I kind of like your idea of the bottleneck effect. It's a dangerous MCAT thing to do because I'm not entirely sure and I'm just guessing on it, but we're going to hit check and it was right. Okay, so let's look at the hints. Inbreeding occurs when mates have a large proportion of shared ancestry.
Same bug family.
The small population of flies that was left after the drought did not necessarily share the same ancestry. Okay, that's right. We do not know whether or not the drought selected for black flies and tan flies differently. Instead, the drought killed flies randomly. Sometimes, when the population becomes very small, one trait can randomly be present in larger proportions than another trait. That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
Like we might have just, for whatever reason, had like 10 black flies and one tan fly left.
Yep.
If we consider the possibility that the flies were killed randomly, two of the answers become less fitting for the situation, which I assume are adaptation and natural selection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, final hint. If the flies were killed randomly, that neither natural selection nor adaptation would be happening. Furthermore, natural selection and adaptation take many generations. On the other hand, the bottleneck effect, which describes a situation where a population becomes very small due to an environmental stress and loses much of its genetic diversity, fits this situation whether or not the drought killed black and tan flies randomly. Okay, so a situation where a population becomes very small due to an environmental stress and loses much of its genetic diversity. Okay, so bottleneck effect is kind of exactly what they're describing, that if we killed the population and we brought it down to just a small random genetic group and it just happened to be mostly black, then that would be what the new population would be.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Consider a population of wildflowers that can be either purple or white. On average, 25% of the flowers, regardless of color, survive until reproduction. Okay, so whatever color they are, 25% of them are going to make it to sexual maturity. Which reason could explain the changes in frequency of the purple and white flowers shown in the table? Okay, so we have generations 1, 2, and 3. For purple flowers, respectively, it goes 96, 121, and 152. For white flowers, it goes 213, 176, 149. So they're going in opposite directions. We're getting more purple flowers as the generations go on, and we're getting less white flowers as the generations go on. And interesting to note that in generation 3, we have almost even numbers of purple and white flowers, 152 and 149. Okay, so possible answer choices. A drought has caused the flower population to fall. Purple flowers have a lower level of fecundity. Fecundity. Fecundity?
I don't know how you say it. I think it is that fertility almost.
Okay. Fecundity than white flowers. A pollinator is more likely to visit a purple flower than a white flower, or stabilizing selection is causing the number of white and purple flowers to equalize. Okay, that one sounds good to me. I'm going to say a drought has caused the flower population to fall. Definitely not, because you're getting more purple flowers.
Yeah.
Purple flowers have a lower level of fecundity. I don't know what fecundity means, so it's going out.
Yeah, but and also like if we're thinking of it as fertility, if that's something you remember from Bio 2 or whatever class that was, then purple flowers having a lower level of fertility, well, they're increasing. So that one can also be crossed out.
Ah, okay, yeah. All right, and then a pollinator is more likely to visit a purple flower than a white flower. Maybe, but I think that's
not in generation 1.
Yeah, that's true.
Or 2.
Yeah, so that's true, and it's also kind of out of the scope of the question.
Yeah.
So by just process of elimination, we're left with stabilizing. Oh, and it's not right. Okay. Wow. A pollinator is more likely to visit a purple flower than a white flower. That is the correct answer. I would have sworn that was out of the scope of this question, but let's look at the hints. The data shown in the table shows that over 3 generations, the number of purple flowers is increasing, whereas the number of white flowers is decreasing. Okay? The question stem tells us that the same percentage of white and purple flowers successfully reproduce. I thought it said that they successfully made it to reproduction. Okay, in the actual question it says, on average, 25% of flowers survive until reproduction. Okay, I guess they're insinuating that they do reproduce. Okay, so then stabilizing selection describes a process in which extremes of a trait, being very tall or very short, for example, are selected against, and an intermediary trait, like being average height, is selected for. This does not appear to be happening in this scenario. A high fecundity means that an organism is able to produce more offspring. In this case, it is possible that purple flowers have a higher fecundity, but probably not the other way around. Okay, so the final hint. One way purple flowers might have higher fecundity would be if a pollinator is more likely to visit a purple flower than a white flower. Huh. Is this making sense to you?
Not a good deal of it.
Okay, So I can understand that. So stabilizing selection's out. When we look back at the chart, you see a rising of purple flowers and a decreasing of white flowers, meaning that the fecundity thing, what did they say? Purple flowers have a lower level of fecundity. That wouldn't make sense because purple flowers are getting more and more as the generations go on. Um, but they might have a higher fecundity because of a pollinator.
Okay.
So I guess that was the real crux of this question, that we needed to see that purple flowers do seem to be having a higher fecundity in this scenario, but the only answer they gave us that could fit that was that there's a pollinator there that's preferring purple flowers. Okay, next question. Which of the following forms... Okay, so when you read these for the first time and you read them out loud, what a lot of people don't realize is that you kind of get like into a pattern of saying things a specific way, and then you get halfway through the question and realize, I didn't enunciate that correctly. So let me try that one more time. Which of the following forms of reproductive isolation are prezygotic? So before you form a zygote. Is it hybrid inviability, gametic isolation, zygote mortality, or temporal isolation? Holy crap.
So this reminds me of AP Bio in high school, which means that I was much more intelligent maybe at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start with process of elimination here.
I like that.
Zygote mortality. Okay, so that sounds like post-zygotic.
Okay.
And hybrid inviability. So I would have already let the zygote form into a baby, the hybrid between the two parent species, and it is not able to reproduce.
Oh, is that what hybrid would mean in this case?
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, well, I mean, I like that.
And so temporal isolation, so no, temporal timing, I don't know, maybe they exist in the same ecosystem but at different times. I don't like separated by years. I don't know.
Temporal isolation sounds like geographic isolation, or
well, there is a spatial isolation in which species like live in different ecosystems that are really far away, and so that is why they couldn't reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what temporal is. I don't remember.
Gametic isolation definitely sounds right.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with two answers.
Because that would be like separate, right?
Right.
Each parent.
Yeah. Zygote mortality seems wrong, but that's not in the answers that have gametic isolation in them. Hybrid inviability. For some reason, I'm thinking that is like once you combine, but a zygote is as soon as the two gametes fuse, that's called a zygote, right?
Yeah.
So, hybrid. Hybrid seems like something's already come together. So I would say, and then temporal isolation could be, the parents. So I'm gonna go and say it's 2 and 4. It's gametic isolation and temporal isolation, and it is.
Woo!
Okay, that was very cool. Let's look at the hints though, because we didn't totally understand this. Okay, prezygotic reproductive isolation refers to barriers that prevent two organisms from mating and occur before a zygote is successfully formed by the combination of a sperm and an egg. Okay, hybrid inviability occurs when a hybrid is born but cannot live to a reproductive age. Okay, so you were right about the definition of a hybrid. It's literally like a hybrid of the two parents. Gametic isolation refers to the inability of two gametes to join. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that's kind of like when you have two species that are really close, but like they just speciated, and they can't form like a viable offspring. Zygote mortality refers to the inability of a zygote to survive embryological development. That was a hard word. Temporal isolation is when organisms are separated by a factor of time, okay, such as day or night, summer or winter, and therefore cannot reproduce. So if two species could actually form a viable offspring, but let's just say one of them is nocturnal and one of them is awake during the day.
Exactly.
All right, yeah, so gametic isolation and temporal isolation. Okay.
Temporal and spatial are important describing words for things like biochem.
Okay, yeah. All right, next question. Question number 5. A certain disease in humans follows a simple inheritance pattern through a gene locus with only 2 alleles. D, which is the dominant non-disease allele, and lowercase d, the recessive diseased allele. If the frequency of a recessive allele is 10% in a population of 100,000 people, how many people would you expect to be healthy carriers of the recessive allele? Assume Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium.
Okay.
So if we're assuming Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, then are we assuming... They said, okay, so 10% of people... So remember, people, it's p squared plus 2pq plus q squared equals 1. So if we have 10% of the population, okay, the frequency of the recessive allele is 10%.
So I think we have to do even less math here because they just gave us p, right? They gave us one of them. So we just do 1 minus 0.1 should give us 0.9, and then multiply that by the 100,000 total population. But that would be for the dominant.
That would give us the amount that would have the dominant.
Right. And so then I guess the remainder?
Well, so that would show us how much of the population has, like, just even has the recessive allele, how much of the population even has the dominant allele.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, because I don't really remember the math behind this a lot, in my head I'm thinking if just the frequency of just the recessive allele is 10%, then you probably don't have, and there's only 2 alleles here,
yeah.
Then I'm guessing you probably don't have anyone in the population who, or very few, who are homozygous recessive for it. So I would say, how many people do you expect to be healthy carriers of the recessive allele? I would say it's going to be close to 50% of the population. The highest one here is 36,000, but a lot of these are pretty close, so we're probably going to have to dive into some amount of math. So if we know Q is 0.1.
Yeah, 0.9 squared, 0.081. Am I doing math right?
0.081. That would be...
the dominant. That would be Q squared. So that would be homozygous dominant, I think, and these are heterozygotes.
Right.
Okay, so what is the question asking me? Oh, and it is actually asking me for that. So it would be 2 times 0.1 times 0.9, so 0.09, right? So 2 times that 0.018.
0.018.
And then that times my overall
100,000.
population. So the 18,000?
18,000.
Oh my gosh. I hope this works.
Oh my god. Hit check.
Yay!
It worked! Oh my gosh!
There's an equation for a reason. Imagine that.
I'm sorry, I just blew everyone's eardrums. I think I'm recording at a higher volume than normal. Okay,
cool.
So that was fantastic. Let's look at these hints. No, it's exactly what you did. That was fantastic. All right, strong work. Next question. All right, which term describes alterations in the composition of a gene pool due to migration of individuals between different populations? Assortative mating, directional selection, gene flow, or genetic drift? Okay, so we're looking at alterations in the composition of a gene pool due to migration of individuals between different populations. Okay, so I've got a pretty good guess as to what this is. I would say genetic drift.
Yep.
That's really a definition kind of thing. But it's not right. Is it gene flow?
Yes.
Huh. So what does gene flow mean? Okay, let's look at the hints. Genetic drift refers to changes in the frequency of alleles in a gene pool simply due to chance. The changes in the frequency of alleles simply due to chance. Huh, okay. Assortative mating is when mates are not chosen randomly, but instead certain individuals are selected for over others, possibly because of the phenotype or location.
So like horses?
Yeah, like racing horses. Directional selection occurs when one extreme of a trait is favored over another and the population starts to express that extreme phenotype more often. Okay. Gene flow refers to alterations in the composition of a gene pool due to migration of individuals from different populations. Okay, that was just it was a definition. Huh. All right, so definitely need to be up on those kind of basic definitions. If for nothing else, definitely in biology, probably in psych soc as well.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Which of the following scenarios represents disruptive selection within a population? Okay, I just forgot what disruptive. Okay, so disruptive means like some crazy environmental thing happens and then everyone has to go towards one extreme phenotype.
I would go with yes. It's been a long time.
Well, I think I literally just read the definition of this and I forgot it already.
Oh.
Okay, but let's read the answers and see if anything fits that. Oak trees with medium-sized leaves are evolutionarily favored as large leaves suffer from dehydration and small leaves don't receive enough sun. No, that seems like that means that they're selecting for the average.
Yeah. So is it a term that we've learned this round for that, the average?
Oh, there was a term that we learned. It was not directional selection. It was
stabilizing.
Stabilizing. That was it.
Oh, so directional picks one extreme, stabilizing picks in the middle.
Yes, and then disruptive means that it's picking one of them.
Okay.
Okay, then second possible answer. As pollution creates turbidity in a lake, brighter fish have greater reproductive success, causing the population to become more brightly colored on average. Okay, that seems
like picking one.
That sounds like good. Okay, heterozygous pink flowers are selected against white homozygous red flowers, and homozygous white flowers are selected for. While homozygous red and homozygous white flowers are selected for. Okay, so that looks like that would be the both. It's selecting for. Well, no, wouldn't that be the opposite of stabilizing?
No, because right, it's between red and white, so it's stabilizing. It's picking in the middle.
No, it's selected against the one in the middle.
Oh.
So it's selecting for both extremes, but I think we just want one extreme.
Well, I don't know, because wouldn't that be directional? That would be a clear direction. Disruptive would just be causing.
But it's also because of something happening in the environment.
Yeah, but we don't necessarily we don't have the ability to say it's just one.
Well, I got a hunch.
Oh, you go with your hunch, and I'm gonna pick the one that I because I have no idea.
Okay, and the last possible answer choice is a population of snakes is split by the construction of a large road, causing speciation of the divided populations. Okay, that one does not sound right. I like as pollution creates turbidity in a lake, brighter fish have a greater reproductive success, causing the population to become more brightly colored on average. And I'm gonna click it. 1, 2, 3, check. Oh, it's not right.
AP Bio, you did me right.
Wow. Okay, so the correct answer was heterozygous pink flowers are selected against, while homozygous red and homozygous white flowers are selected for. So
yes, I think I remember all these now. So the directional is literally just if I were to only pick small of this certain species, or if I were to switch it and only to pick tall words.
So it's like the opposite of what I was saying.
Yeah. So you were saying that the what is this called? So, disruptive selection would be like one because you would be disrupting it in some form or fashion, but it doesn't select for like one specific phenotype because that would just be directional.
Okay. All right, so let's look at the hints real quick. Disruptive selection occurs when two extreme phenotypes on a continuum are selected for. Well, that's a good definition to know.
Yeah.
Oak trees with medium-sized leaves. Okay, we knew that one wasn't right. That the oak trees one was in fact an example of stabilizing selection, like we thought. If a population of snakes is split by the construction of a large road, it would likely cause speciation, but this is not disruptive selection. Okay, here's my answer. So pollution, creating turbidity in a lake and causing brighter fish, so one extreme, to have greater reproductive success would be an example of directional selection. Okay.
So turbidity, cloudiness?
Yes.
Okay.
So directional selection is what I was trying to describe, where you have one extreme that's being selected for rather than disruptive, meaning that the middle ground is being selected against and the extremes both are being selected for. All right, next question. Researchers are seeking evidence to confirm a close evolutionary relationship between two extant species. Which of the following pieces of evidence would be least likely to help the researchers demonstrate this relationship? Okay, so they're trying to confirm a close evolutionary relationship. So what is least likely to help them? The identification of several analogous structures between the species, the sequence of a ribosome-coding gene from each species, a fossil that shares traits with both species, or the discovery of similar stages of embryonic development.
Okay, so you are the dry lab person with all of the knowledge of sequencing and evolutionary comparison and all of this, so lay some knowledge on me.
Okay, so the one thing that stuck out to me immediately is that if we have two extant species, and we want to confirm a close evolutionary relationship, the sequence of a ribosome coding gene, ribosomes which are specifically known to not evolve like at all, like I think like it's only been like a 5% change between all extant species over the past like billion years or
So
something.
they're like really good at what they do, so why change?
Exactly. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Then we have so I think that one's out. We have the identification of several analogous structures between the species. That could help, I suppose. A fossil that shares traits with both species. That one could definitely help because if you find an ancestor and you see, oh, this ancestor had, X trait, and we see both of these guys have X trait, then they probably came from there. And then the discovery of similar stages of embryonic development, yeah, that implies that they came from a similar line of development, similar line of evolution. So I think it's the sequence of a ribosome coding gene.
And I would go with that too. Oh,
Oh,
no.
and it's not right. Ouch. Ouch, kabibbles. Okay. Wow, the correct answer is the identification of several analogous structures between the species. Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, let's look at the hints. The question asks the test taker to identify which piece of evidence would not support the hypothesis that two extant species have a close evolutionary relationship. A fossil that shares traits with both species would support the idea, right? One tool evolutionary biologists use is embryonic development, okay. Another tool for evolutionary biologists is DNA. The most commonly sequenced genes for testing evolutionary relationships are ones that are essential to almost all organisms, such as genes for ribosomes. However,
yeah,
I would assume because I was trying to, read into the question, and they have a close evolutionary relationship, like between us and chimpanzees, I don't think there's like any difference in our ribosomes, like none. So I mean, maybe the fact that there is none would confirm that it's close, but I think maybe even like between us and fish, it's like hardly different at all. So you don't really get a good scale there, I thought. But then they said
look at the definition for analogous structures.
analogous structures are structures that that serve the same function but come from a different evolutionary origin. Oh, so like bats on a wing and bats on a bird.
Yeah, exactly.
Bats on a wing. Wings on a bat and bats on a bird.
Like a verb.
Yes, bats on a bird. Okay, they come from a different evolutionary origin. If you identify these structures, that would be